3, 2, 1.
Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Happy Hour podcast. I am your host, Ricky Valero. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at week 2 of the NFL, some of the newsworthy things out of it, share our thoughts on Thursday night football, give you Matthew Fox's games of the week, talk about some fantasy football start and sit, and then give my week 3 best bets, and then we'll finish it off with the movie corner. As always, I am joined by my delightful yet fun partner who, before we got on the air, really hurt my feelings, but now we're here, so we're doing the show. I haven't quit quite yet, Mr. Matthew Fox. How are you, buddy?
It's another week. Fortunately, it did drop, into the 60s, and actually right now it's in the 50s, and we have some kind of overcast clouds, so I feel like this gives me free license to drink those pumpkin spice lattes.
It is pumpkin spice season. Couldn't be more excited about it. And speaking of pumpkin spice, talk about something amazing. We saw a huge thing of happen. Like the first 2 weeks of the NFL season have been incredibly wild, right? You know what I mean? Like it's just been one after another after another. I mean, we've seen so many close games come down to the wire, and then it was like all these games come down to the wire, and then it was like the Sunday night game and two Monday night games were just absolutely abysmal because they were lopsided. But at least the Broncos won, right? You're excited about that?
It was both endearing and disheartening that the home fans had to count down the play clock so they could get a playoff. I didn't ever think I'd see a coach that would make me miss the well-organized days of the Vance Joseph era. I think it needs to do better in a hurry. They've had more delay of game penalties in 2 weeks than they had all of 2021. I think they said all of 2021 and 2020 combined, which is not a great sign, I have to be honest.
Yeah, it was quite a week. Just a few quick rundowns of the games last week that kind of ended up with a shocking turn of events. Obviously, you had the Jets squeak one out past the Browns, which actually was a joy for me to watch. The Giants are somehow 2-0, which makes me want to kill myself. The Jaguars blanked the Colts 24-0, which is just absolutely absurd. Ravens blew a huge lead against the Dolphins. Then, of course, you had the Cowboys beat the Bengals, which the Bengals are struggling. It sounds like somebody on this podcast, if I remember correctly, called that they would not be as good as they were last year. I don't know who it was.
I'll be honest. They aren't my upset special, but I actually picked the Jets in week 3. The Bengals spent $74 million on an offensive line last year. They averaged 3.6 sacks and 6.5 quarterback hits a game. This year, after spending $74 million and some draft picks, they're averaging 6.9 sacks and 10.7 quarterback hits a game. So that's I'm no math major, but I think that's worse. Big question coming out. You'd be curious to get your thoughts. AFC South, we already knew it was going to be kind of a hot trash just division. I personally believe after the first 2 weeks, both Frank Reich and Mike Vrabel should be on the hot seat.
So I agree with you 100%. I told you, Mike, I thought Frank Reich should have been fired last year, and I meant that 100%. I feel like he single-handedly caught – I feel like Carson Wentz ended up being the fall guy, which I'm not saying Carson Wentz –
It wasn't Carson Wentz's fault altogether. Carson Wentz finished as QB 14 last year. I think because of that narrative the Colts successfully spun, you thought – he was trash, but when I went back to look at stats and stuff,
he was actually not terrible.
And I didn't know they haven't won in Jacksonville since 2013.
I saw that.
That's like one of those stats that should stop your heart a little.
It's a Jacksonville team that hasn't been really good since what? I think like 2013. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, whatever. But it's crazy because you look at it. It's. I said last year Frank Reich should have been fired because of how he mismanaged that how he mismanaged Jonathan Taylor as well. Like he refused early on in the season, the year before that, just to give him the rock, let him do his thing. But when they got leads, he continued to try to throw the ball. If you give Carson Wentz the opportunity to make a mistake, he's going to make the mistake, right? You know what I mean? But when you get ahead in these games, you got to feed the ball. The two things that I think that you point out what's wrong with this team is this. Get your star players the ball, right? Now, obviously, on the offensive side of the things, on one hand, John Robinson failed to really recapture anything on this offense. They really thought Robert Woods was going to come in and be what they needed him to be. I didn't understand that. They got rid of A.J. Brown. They drafted Treylon Burks, whose comps were A.J. Brown, right? But his comps were A.J. Brown. There's so many different comps out there, but it's going to take him time to get into those shoes. So you didn't do anything to fix this offense after getting rid of your single best receiver on your team by a large margin. And then, of course, the lack of the inability to get Derrick Henry the ball in his hands blows my mind, right? I can never understand. I understand you want to hand it off to him. But the problem is, it's hard to tackle Derrick Henry, right? You know what I mean? It's hard to tackle that man. I understand you want to give him the ball 15, 20, 25 times a game, but try to get it in his hands in the passing game as well, right? Get him in space, and he's one of the hardest men in football to take down, right? You drove the ball down the field against the Bills very impressively on that first drive, scored a touchdown, and couldn't score another point the rest of the game. I've said this time and time again. This team cannot win if Derrick Henry gets stopped. Derrick Henry gets stopped. Ryan Tannehill cannot wheel this team to victories if it comes to shootout. He just can't do it. It's just not in his makeup. And I blame some of it on Ryan Tannehill because I think he sucks, but I blame some of it on Ryan Tannehill, but also blame the play calling. And then I've also blamed John Robinson for the lack of ability to surround him with playmakers.
And that's, I think that's a fair thing to bring up about both the Titans and Colts. I'm not saying the coaching has been incredible, but the Titans really have steadily degraded their weapons and their line. They let a lot of pieces. A couple of their starting guards from last year are on Buffalo. Buffalo is a team that looks like it has a pretty decent line right now. They bet a lot on Robert Woods coming back from an injury. We wondered, was Derrick Henry showing the first signs of falling off due to age at the end of last year, or was it just Russ coming back from injury? I would think, looking at how he started, that question's been answered a little bit. Where I would be most critical of Vrabel is their defense has been really bad for the last 3 years, and that's supposed to be kind of his area of expertise. On the flip side, Chris Ballard should take some heat for the Colts as well.
Yep.
They have consistently failed to get weapons around there. I know they've gone and gotten a new quarterback every year. I made a joke that the only difference between Frank Reich and Matt Rule was one Phillip Rivers-led playoff appearance. That's only kind of a joke, and I know Frank Reich early on would have gotten something of a pass because they seem to have a Super Bowl caliber team, and then Andrew Luck retired right before the season. That's a blow to be dealt from, but they've consistently changed. I think making, you could understand moving on from Brissett. You can understand that Phillip Rivers retired, but dumping Carson Wentz, who was his guy, after 1 year where Wentz was injured going into the season, and that was part of how they had such a slow start. But their line has noticeably degraded. They went from a couple of years ago having what would have been considered one of the best lines to pretty mediocre. And, when Pittman's not there, they don't actually have a professional receiver. Paris Campbell seemed like a good pick at the time. I was excited to see him play with Andrew Luck, but he's going on year 4 of doing nothing. And yet this week, 2 targets, no receptions in a game where they had no receivers, and they have nothing that they've been backfilling. But then you would also have to be critical. We've commented at times, feels like Frank Reich forgets Jonathan Taylor's on his team. Sunday would have been one of those times. 24-0 is lopsided, but at some point in that game, it was closer than that. And Jonathan Taylor only had 9 carries. Meanwhile, you can't protect Matt Ryan, and you have no one to throw the ball to. So there is – coaching deserves to be under the spotlight, but I'm with you. It's deeper than coaching.
Yeah, it really is. You had, it was, 14-0 at the, or 17-0 at the half. And Jonathan Taylor had 5 carries at the half. That's inexcusable. That's just inexcusable. And the thing about it is we've seen big time comebacks already this year, right? The Dolphins down 35-14, come back and win the game. Now, why are they able to do stuff like that? Because they have weapons around them. I don't understand why someone like the Colts, why did they not hard pressed to get Tyreek Hill on this offense, right? There was weapons to be had this offseason where you could have traded for wide receivers and gotten weapons surrounded Matt Ryan. Now, Matt Ryan isn't no spring chicken, right? You know what I mean? He's a little bit older. He's not able to get out of the pocket. He's not able to elude that pass rush like he used to be. So that's a problem whenever you have a declining offensive line. But you're right. It's surface level. The problem with Vrabel is they gave him a contract extension this past season. And you reminded me about the Cliff Kingsbury thing, that he got a contract extension. So in order to get out of these guys are going to come out of this unscathed, I think, just this season. Frank Wright, maybe not. I do think that he got an extension, I think, at the end of last season, if I remember correctly. I do think he got one recently. But even with that, this division, like the Jaguars could theoretically win this division. They really could. I don't, you have the Colts who are averaging 10 points a game through 2 games, and obviously just got shut out by the Jaguars. Shut out. You know what I mean? You can't get shut out by the Jaguars. You can lose to the Jaguars, but you can't get shut out to the Jaguars, especially a week removed where the Commanders were able to move the football. They scored 28 points. 4 touchdown passes by Carson Wentz, who already has more touchdown passes than Matt Ryan. You know what I mean? I don't know. Through 2 games, Carson Wentz has 7 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. You know what I mean?
And there's a team where there were questions about whether they had managed to find weapons, and Curtis Samuel looks like what we thought we might get when he went there last year. Jahan Dotson looks like a great pickup, and they already had Terry McLaurin. They have Logan Thomas. I mean, Carson Wentz went to a better offense, one that worked on the offensive line, worked on the weapons, and worked on building a scheme. Those are things that it doesn't – Matt Ryan may have gotten deposited in an offense that has less options, weapons, and talent than what he had in Atlanta.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about. You know what I mean? Like you have, I was looking at it's funny to me when you look at, I meant to mention this, but like you look at the names that Matt Ryan was throwing to this week, I just was laughing. Like you had Doolin, you had Hines, Patman, Strachan, Granson, Ali Cox, and again, this is me just realizing how mad I am again. So you only have 9 carries for Jonathan Taylor in that game. He only had 1 target. 1 target. How do you not, your best player on your team by far? Like, it's Jonathan Taylor. He's in tier A through Z. You know what I mean? Then you have whoever else on this roster. I don't understand what they're doing. I agree with you. If the Colts can't win this division this year, and maybe even win a playoff game, because I don't really feel like a division win for the Colts would be anything. Actually, we're talking 8 or 9 wins is going to win this division. Like and I think you agree with me there. Like you're talking about a team right now. Like it's a division that has 1 win in it right now. Through 2 weeks in the season, it has 1 win right now, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And that's actually the team now that I think is going to be the winner. If you look at Tennessee's schedule, and the Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts play each other 2 out of the next 4 weeks. But if you look at both these teams are going to be 0-3 going into next week. The Colts are hosting the Chiefs. I give them a -5% chance of winning that game, the way that they're playing and the way that the Chiefs are playing. Even if the Colts get Pittman back, which it looks like they're tracking to, their defense hasn't been incredible. Their offense hasn't been able to move the ball against lesser defenses. Tennessee is tracking just about the same. I think it's a long road to hoe. And if you look at Tennessee and Indianapolis's schedules,
like, listen, you're right. Like, so after in November, these are the teams that the Titans play: Kansas City, Denver, Green Bay, Cincinnati, and then after that they have Philadelphia. Like, and then they end the season. They have Jacksonville twice. They could be very much going into. Let's just say that even if you split the Indianapolis game, who knows if they can beat Washington? Who knows if the Titans can beat Washington in Washington? You know what I mean? You're talking about a team.
I don't think they can.
I agree with you.
Washington's a better team. Tennessee's not going to be able to beat anyone if they can't figure out some kind of defense either.
Yeah, and they can't score points. You know what I mean? And that's, I understand losing to the Bills, right? You know what I mean? A lot of teams are going to lose to the Bills, but you got embarrassed by the Bills this week. And that's to me something that's very alarming. But with that being said, we're going to jump into news and notes. I'll tell you what, those fireworks are perfect for the news and notes this week, because if anybody watched the Saints and Buccaneers game, there was some huge fireworks. I think it was like halfway through the third quarter. These games between these two teams have always been, the chippy. You know what I'm saying? They're always chippy. It's a division rivalry. And for some reason, Tom Brady in his previous 4 games in the regular season just failed to beat the Saints. The final score ended up being, I think, 20-9 or whatever it was. So they ended up beating them. But through that third quarter, we saw a fight break out because there was a play where Tom's frustrated. Tom's being Tom, as we've noticed over the years. He gets frustrated and thought there was a pass interference call. Like, don't get me wrong. I know everybody's gonna be like, you were biased. Yeah, I did think it was pass interference as well. But Tom darted down the field, started yelling, and of course, Lattimore and the Saints got involved, and they came to not blows, but verbal blows there. And out of left field, you had who was it from the Bucs that came in first? It wasn't Evans first. You're muted there.
It was Mike Evans. He came off the sideline.
Yeah, no, somebody else I think came over to him had words with Lattimore first.
He and Brady were going back and forth talking, and
it was Fournette. Fournette came over there too. Yeah, and then Evans came out of nowhere and just. Now, listen, there's a history between Evans and Lattimore, so it's not really surprising. But at the same time, guys are built to protect your quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, your quarterback can't be in a scenario where they could get roughed up or anything like that. But Evans came out. It was a cheap shot by Evans. I'm not going to lie. It was, period. End of story, period. You know what I mean? He came over there, gave him a big blow, and then it started throwing some punches. Everything kind of happened. I'm surprised. And at the end of the day, Mike Evans is suspended for this week's game. Big matchup, I think, for this team, as you know, they are 2-0, but they're struggling on offense. But the one thing that really
we got a fun trade question for you.
Oh, perfect. Not even. Well, yeah. All right. So with that being said, we'll trade it Cooper Kupp and Aaron Rodgers for Patrick Mahomes and AJ Brown in Superflex. I have Chase and St. Brown.
Definitely rather have Mahomes.
Yeah, Mahomes Brown is way better than, especially in Superflex. Yeah,
it's tough to lose Kupp, but I think Chase and St. Brown and AJ Brown will be fine.
Yeah, especially with getting AJ Brown in return. Rodgers, I mean, who knows what he's going to do the rest of the year. And then on top of that, we have another question I didn't realize. Do you think I would be able to pull off a trade of Carter and Corey Davis for Najee? If I was the Najee owner, not. Yeah, I wouldn't do that in a million years.
I mean, Carter's looked okay, but it already looks like Breece Hall is starting to usurp him for as much as they like his heart and his character. Hall's usage is going up. And Corey Davis, I mean, he has had 2 good weeks, but last week was mostly the Bengals or the Browns defense completely forgot about him on like a 66-yard bomb as time was running out. If you took that away, he didn't have reliable production. I think with Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson, I'd rather have them.
I agree as well. Sorry about that, Sammy. That's my bad. I have the chat blocked off in the corner, so I'll take all the blame for that one. So with that being said, the Bucs signed Cole Beasley. What is that going to look like for Sunday? I think they have Cole Beasley, Perriman, Scotty Miller. Scotty Miller looks just absolutely dreadful.
I don't think Beasley will get called up. He's on the practice squad.
I did say that, yeah.
I would be surprised. Godwin is
I don't think Godwin's going to play.
I don't think he's going to play. And Julio Jones, everybody said he was only just getting veteran days off the week before. Looks like he's actually hurt because he didn't play last week. Yeah,
and it's crazy because of how good he looked. It's like we saw flashes of it, and then he gets hurt again, and it's like we're here all over again, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of insane.
As much as they're going to be down, I just am not convinced that they're going to actually pull Cole Beasley up and play him week 1. So I think you're going to get Russell Gage, you're going to get Scotty Miller, you're going to get Perriman. Perriman looked decent. He'll be out there. They have Jalen Darden They'll use their.
I wish they'd use him.
I also think they will probably try to lean on Fournette. David Montgomery only had 15 carries, got 122 yards for the Bears, who had no passing attack on Sunday night. The Packers let Dalvin Cook run all over them on week 1, so I think there is an opportunity to run the ball. Lenny has been running pretty well. I think that could be a big feature of that game.
I agree. We got a bit of a snoozer tonight. I mean, a football game tonight. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Cleveland Browns in what feels like it'll be a 6-3 matchup. You have Jacoby Brissett taking on Mitchell Trubisky. My first question to you before we dive into some of this is, do you think it's Kenny Pickett time?
I get why they were calling for him. You know, Kenny Pickett is a former or was in first-round pick. And the offense has not been spectacular. They largely won in week 1 because of the defense. At the same time, if you've watched that offense, Mitch Trubisky's not their only problem. I'm not saying he's been incredible, but they never really got the line right. They didn't work on that. You've seen Najee Harris last week had 15 carries and 49 yards. We know that he's got decent talent. He's not able to move the ball. I'm not sure throwing Kenny Pickett in on the road on a short week is going to get them there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's definitely not time for him maybe yet, but I think another week of struggling station has to start happening. You know what I mean? We have to start having that conversation of they almost lost week 1. They probably should have lost week 1, even though they had 5 turnovers and 85 sacks of Burrow. So
yeah, and I think if they're continuing to struggle in a few weeks and going through, they will possibly look at making that decision. We know, even though Mitch got named a team captain, he must not have a very solid grip on the job, because he was actually named a team captain before they even officially named him as a starter. Tomlin waited a really long time. I just think Tomlin would prefer to roll with veterans and try to grind out wins. But if that becomes impossible, he has never had a losing season as a Steelers coach. We thought they might be in for it this year. He's going to do everything he can to keep that from happening.
All right, who do you got winning the big game tonight? I personally have went back and forth on this with, the lines at +4.5, and I was like, man, should I? You know what? I think the Steelers win.
I'm also taking the Steelers. The Browns, I like Chubb, and I think he'll run strong. I just don't know with Brissett if this passing game can support more than one fantasy asset, and I don't know how their line. Batonio comes in beat up a little bit. Jack Conklin's beat up a little bit. They're going to play, but they were on the injury report. So is Myles Garrett. Jadeveon Clowney is out. So in a close, grinded out game, which I think this could be, I would give the advantage to the Steelers.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. I truly don't feel like it's going to be very close. We're talking, I don't know how many touchdowns are going to be scored, but it doesn't feel like there's going to be many of them tonight. I think both teams, we got a 17-10 finish tonight, or something, 17-13, or maybe even a 9-6. I might throw some money on the game to end 9-6 tonight. We just had 5 field goals. That's it. No touchdowns or anything like that. We got a late field goal by Chris. Is Boswell still there in Pittsburgh? I don't even follow kickers. Boswell?
Yeah, Boswell's there.
All right. Well, if Boswell's still there, then they might miss the field goal.
The last of the killer bees.
Oh, man. All right. So now with that being said, we both took the Steelers, which I'm a little bit surprised at. I try not to look at the show sheet of who you pick, so I didn't know if you'd be with me on that one, so I like it. Now transitioning over to Matt's Games of the Week.
So in the early window, the game I like, which I actually think is the game of the week for week 3, is the 2-0 Bills at the 2-0 Dolphins. Both these offenses have been going gangbusters. The Bills have had a pretty good defense. They have shut down the Rams and then the Titans. I'll be curious to see how they fare against the Dolphins. The Dolphins, obviously in that track meet with Baltimore last week, but their passing game is going really well. Neither of these teams can run the ball, so I'm still not in on Chase Edmonds and Singletary, but I'm hoping for some good, fun fireworks down in South Florida. Late window game that I like is the Green Bay Packers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brady and Rodgers should be a good one. Both these teams are lacking a little bit at wide receiver thanks to the injuries to Godwin and the suspension of Evans. You're still trying standings out. This could be a run-heavy game. I kind of like Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, and Leonard Fournette in this one. Jones really was the difference maker last week for Green Bay. I think this is going to be a fun one. Sunday night game, 49ers at the Broncos. I love the Broncos, but they have not looked good the last couple of weeks. The 49ers offense looked like it kicked into a higher gear when Jimmy G came out last week. He's unquestionably the starter this week. Denver's defense has struggled guarding the tight end and going over the middle, and it looks like this might be George Kittle's season debut, so that has me a little bit worried. I'm excited for a fun primetime game. I'm also hoping the hometown fans don't have to count down the play clock just so that Denver can get the ball off. My upset of the week – they burned me in week 1, but I'm going back to the well. I'm taking the Lions over the Vikings. I cannot believe that they are 6.5-point dogs in that game. If you watched both these teams play the Eagles the first 2 weeks, the Lions let the Eagles build a lead and then came back and made it very close at the end. The Vikings looked awful on Monday night. I actually just like the Lions. I think they have a little bit more heart.
Yeah, looking at some of these lines this week, it's been quite interesting, and I'm very.
Did you know that Denver are home underdogs?
Don't even get. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I've got some tidbits on that that's really gonna light some fires. But we're gonna head over to our start and sit segment, folks. I think that's my favorite music of all the ones we have. You know what I mean? It's got a little upbeat tempo to it. You know what? I am going to jump off into our must starts of the week, and there's a few guys that I'm taking a look at. I almost had a full-fledged Commanders thing, so I had to really retool my entire thing. I like Carson Wentz this week. 7 touchdowns through 2 games. You can't not like that guy. I like him ahead of a couple different guys as well. I like him better than Brady this week. If I own both those guys on my roster, if I had both those guys on my roster, I would start Wentz over Brady this week. I know that sounds absurd, but I just would do it. Same probably for Russell Wilson. A.J. Dillon, the two-headed monster is going to continue. They have to keep feeding both of these guys the ball in order for this offense to work until Rodgers figures out his weapons there. Garrett Wilson's the guy that I really feel like is going to continue to thrive. They're going to get him the ball, get him the ball, get him the ball. You saw what he's capable of doing in that offense. And to be honest with you, the more I see this Jets team play, if Wilson can play just a little bit better than Joe Flacco, this team might be a little bit better than I think we gave him credit for. And maybe me personally gave him credit for. And what's Salah, is that how you say his name? Salah is building there. I really feel like the Jets can be a contender in the next year or two. I really like that team.
I thought they'd take a leap. I had them at a 6-win team.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising just to see them play, like I said. And Flacco hasn't been playing great exactly. So it's kind of he's playing enough to kind of move the chains and stuff like that. But the team looked like a completely different team in week 2 than they did in week 1 anyway. And for my tight end, Logan Thomas, I love Logan Thomas. I think he's one of the better tight ends in football if he stays healthy. You know what I mean? And I think that he's one guy that I think is going to have a big week this week with Wentz. So I hate to go on both Commanders there, but I did it anyway. Fox, who are your starts for the week?
Well, my first one you're going to love. My quarterback start is Tua Tagovailoa. He looked really good last week. 199 yards, 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Ended up throwing for over 470 and 6 touchdowns total. I think they're going to have to put up points to battle with the Bills. It looks like he's made the most of having Tyreek Hill, Mike Gesicki, and Jalen Waddle out there. I think this is going to be a fun game. I have him finishing top 12. My running back start, I mentioned it earlier. I think the Buccaneers are going to have to rely on the ground game. I like Leonard Fournette in this one, especially after we saw Montgomery, who had been totally bottled up the week before, run for 122 yards on 15 carries. My wide receiver start, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's had 8 straight games of incredible production. I think that continues. He has really found something with Jared Goff in that offense, and I think that continues.
Did you know that if he makes it to 9 straight 8 reception games, he breaks the record this week?
And you know what? I think it's going to happen.
Tied with AJ Brown. He's tied with Antonio Brown right now.
Yeah, because I think Minnesota is going to put up points. I think it's going to be a back and forth game. But I obviously said I like the Lions this week. And then I'm going with Dallas Goedert. They've been getting him involved. I think this is going to be another up-tempo game. Carson Wentz is going to want to do a lot of things. I liked that pick of Carson Wentz. He's going against the Eagles. We haven't seen that revenge narrative play out that well, but I think the Eagles are going to be going out looking to do some stuff too. I was encouraged last week, the Jalen Hurts spread, the targets out among A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert, getting them all involved. I think there's room for all of them to be successful. And the tight end landscape is not quite as bullish as we thought it was going to be preseason.
Yeah, I agree. It's been quite interesting that Eagles offense looks so good Monday night. Like it looked like a more fine-tuned. Like week 1, they looked incredible. Don't get me wrong, but they look like a more balanced offense, which kind of surprised me. But Jalen Hurts is playing out of his mind right now. Like that team has every opportunity to run away with that division, which they do. They really have the opportunity to do so. I like the Commanders in that game. I don't think they win the game, but I think it's going to be a little bit closer than people expect. I personally feel like I think it's going to be a pretty good game, I think.
It seems like the NFC East in general is better than we thought they were going to be.
I refuse. I mentioned this week on the show with Chris. I refuse to live in a world where the Giants are 2-0. I just
they won't be undefeated after Monday night.
So with that being said, my sits of the week. I mentioned them earlier during my starts. I'm sitting Tom Brady this week. I don't have any faith in these pass catchers. I'm sure this is just going to result into him throwing 5 touchdown passes to, Tom Brady's stepson, his kid, we'll have somebody. Bruce Arians might get out there and catch a touchdown. I don't know. Somebody, Byron Leftwich might go catch a touchdown. Who knows? You know what I mean? He'll probably throw 5 touchdowns because I said this. Melvin Gordon's my sit at the running back position. The 49ers run defense is pretty good. And I just feel like I have a lot of thoughts on this game, but I just think that Melvin Gordon's just not going to find the end zone this week. And Tyler Lockett, sorry. I mean, he had his 1 week that he's going to be good, and he'll probably have 3 weeks where he'll have 1 catch. So that's my other one. I don't have a tight end this week. I just have those 3. What about you, Fox?
So my sit at quarterback is Russell Wilson. I still like Russ, but this offense needs to come together a little bit. I still have him as a top-end QB2, but I just don't see a top 12 finish right now. They need to work some stuff out. Last week he was QB24. I'm hoping for better, not even confident if Judy's going to be healthy enough to play or Hamler, and that makes their receiving situation a little bit interesting. My sit is Chase Edmonds. I mentioned the running game is not something I'm looking forward to in Miami Buffalo because neither of these teams seems to commit to a back. They're using committees, and neither of them seems to care about giving a lot of work to those committees. Chase Edmonds signed a big deal, but he has barely been involved. I don't see that substantially changing.
Yeah, Mozart had more carries than him this week, right? Too, right?
And yardage. Mostert seems to be the rusher, and Edmonds is not a big enough factor in a passing game there. It has not panned out yet. Maybe it gets.
I think Mozart's a better back too. Mozart's pretty good when he stays healthy. Well, yeah.
2 or 3 more weeks, and he'll probably be gone. My wide receiver sit is Hunter Renfrow. I was hoping he was going to have a big role. It's been an inconsistent role. He's dealing with that concussion. He fumbled twice last week. They need to work some things out with the Raiders. It looks like they're more locked in on Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, and sadly Matt Collins. My tight end sit is Albert O for the Broncos. The Broncos are using 2 or 3 different tight ends. Last week it was Eric Saubert who got the 1 touchdown that they had. So I just am not confident in them.
All right, well, maybe we shouldn't be ringing the bell because last week wasn't so pretty. Ended up going 0-3, which really broke my heart because I really felt good about the Bengals' first half against the Cowboys. Who knew that Cooper, Rush, Ruff, whoever it is, whatever, I don't even care. Like, how do you get down 14-3 at the half? I really thought the Bengals would come out there and show the Cowboys up. This is another thing. We mentioned it earlier. How do you drive the ball down the field and score a touchdown on your opening drive, but then you don't score another touchdown all game? I had the Titans over 1.5 touchdowns, and then the Bucks just could not move the ball down the field. They only got to 2 touchdowns and 2.5. So far in the year, I am 2-3-1 on my bets, and I'm not very pleased with that. But we're coming back this week. I have 4 very strong picks that I like. I've got 3 underdog bets against the spread that really kind of makes me nervous. But with that being said, I really feel like my first one is going to be the Houston Texans plus 3.5 over the Chicago Bears. I really like the Texans defense and what they're capable of doing. The Bears are just not good at throwing the football. They're just not. And I think the Texans defense has really been strong throughout the first 2 weeks of the season. The Broncos look like a mess. So what do you kind of factor in with that? Was it more the Broncos being a mess, or was it the Texans defense? Either way, you still have to walk away impressed with that defense. My second bet of the week is going to be the Broncos +3 against the 49ers. It blows my mind because, you automatically get 3 points for being the home team, right? You get 3 points out the board for being the home team. So that means that the spread is 4.5 points in favor of the 49ers on the road in Denver. I like the Broncos, and I even like the plus line there at +100 for them to win this game. I think the Broncos are going to beat the 49ers. I know they haven't looked great, but with that being said, I really like the Broncos +3.5. And then, of course, moving on to the Cowboys Monday night game, I got this at +3.5. It's gone down a little bit since the announcement just since the movement of the spread. So the +3.5 is sitting at -162. I still like it at that number, even at the +3 at -148. My stone cold lock of the week is going to be I keep on trying to say St. Louis Rams still for some reason. They haven't been St. Louis in like 10 years. But the Los Angeles Rams on the road against Arizona Cardinals, -2.5. I brought that to -3 just because of the number. The Rams are going to destroy this team. The Cardinals should not be 1-1. The Raiders blew that game. I don't believe in this Cardinals team. I think it's awful. And I'm sorry. I just really like this Rams team. So give me the Rams -3 on the road against the Cardinals. So just a quick recap right there. Cowboys +3.5, Broncos +3, Texans +3.5, and then of course the Rams -3 this week. Fox, what are your quick thoughts on my bets?
So I did pick the Broncos to win. I think ultimately they will. I actually also picked the Cowboys. I think that's going to be close. So I like those bets. I picked the Bears to win. There's something about at home. I like the Texans okay, but watching them play last week, there's something not quite in sync, which it's hard to believe that could be the case with a Lovie Smith coach team. I know. But so I actually picked the Bears in that one. I'll be curious to see. And I picked the Cardinals. The Cardinals looked a lot better in the second half. The Rams have looked really bad the last 2 weeks. They look out of sync on offense and defense. The Cardinals are usually better in the first half of the season. I thought these teams might split games this year, and so Cardinals at home.
And also, just to add a tidbit, I had said this on the podcast or on this betting show the other night, but I refuse to live in a world where the Giants start the season 3-0. If I live in a world where that happens, I might just want to jump off a bridge. I'm just going to throw that out right there. I just cannot believe we're going to live in a world that happens. But with that being said, folks, we're going to transition over to the movie corner. So anybody there, if you want to drop in some questions while we're talking about movies, we're more than happy to answer them as they go. But with that being said, we're going to transition over to the movie corner. Little bit of a light week in the world of film. A couple of things coming out on streaming platforms is Meet Cute is on Paramount Plus. Last week we saw the release of Good Night Mommy on Prime Video. Sydney, a documentary about Sidney Poitier, is dropping on Apple TV Plus tomorrow. And then for theaters, we're looking at Don't Worry, Darling being the big release of the weekend. Fox, have you watched anything? I know we're in the midst of the opening of fall TV. Have you seen anything that's piqued your interest quite yet?
The new fall shows, some of them have been okay. I know you saw Reboot and you enjoyed that. I thought the first couple episodes were pretty interesting. I watched the pilot for Quantum Leap, and it confirmed my suspicion that we didn't need a new version of Quantum Leap. So I'll be curious to see, the big thing, House of the Dragon, we've now gotten to the midway point in the season where they're going to switch and age up the characters. I'm going to be curious how that goes. The season has been interesting, but not what I expected. And I'm kind of with you. It's going to be kind of weird to see the two of the main characters like totally gone. Like,
I'm
no
excited about the one girl because it's Olivia Cook. You know what I mean? Because I
Yeah.
know she's an incredible actress. And it's not to say that this girl that's taking over from Amelia Hallcock's not going to be great, because she might be. But she's just been such the forefront of the show. It's going to be hard to see. Like, between her and Matt Smith, like that's the hard. That's the show. That's the show. You know what I'm saying? It just is. So we're getting that. Like, I think it's a 10-year jump. I think they're going into next week. So, which is going to be it's going to be weird how they handle that, which I don't understand if they had to do that. Like, if you kind of knew you were going to get a second season, I just feel like they could have played this out a little bit longer. It's going to be weird how everything happens. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. It's going to be weird. It's this, I think we had 10 episodes this year. I think it is, right?
Yeah.
So it's 10 episodes. So we're going to go through the second half of the season. I've enjoyed it so far. I've been a fan. I've liked some of it. Some of the storylines is weird. I just want to see how they play out before I kind of make a decision on how I feel about the certain storylines. But jumping 10 years, mid-year is going to really it could really hinder the show really bad. You know what I mean? It could. It could make a bad turn for the worse. So.
Yeah, and we're launching into network seasons. So far, there's only been 2 new network shows I've seen, which is Monarch, which is horrendous. I watched the second episode and I was like, oh my God. Imagine if they took Empire and they had mediocre music and no reason to watch. Set in the world of country music. This was a high profile get for Fox, but they held on to it for over a year, which was curious to me, like why it was continuously, because it got picked up to pilot in 2020, I believe. I'm like, why is it taking so long? And then I watched the pilot and I was like, right, cool.
That's insane. That's pretty insane.
Between that and Quantum Leap, I'm like, oh, now I know why no one's watching network TV, guys.
That is pretty insane to think about, though. Like, that's pretty weird how it's taking that long, and then whenever it comes out, it sucks. So that's fun.
Well, it makes me think that's why it took that long. But one of the movies that came out last week that I don't think either of us had seen at the time we did this is The Woman King, and we both love that movie. Both of us now have that up in the top 10. If you haven't gotten a chance to see it, it's a great action movie. Really love Viola Davis. Really loved Thuso Badu. I apologize for not pronouncing your name. You were incredible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I also like Lashana Lynch. I thought she was really good in the show too, or in the movie too. I'll tell you what,
it's a great cast.
Yeah, ensemble is incredible. Like a lot of the things I've seen so far. Obviously, over the next couple months, we're going to be pushing a lot of films out the door with a lot of Oscar award contenders, but. It's going to be hard pressed for me to really kind of erase a few performances that I really love, like Emma Thompson in Good Luck to You, Leo Grande. That was really good. Regina Hall in Honk for Jesus, and now Viola Davis. Like, Viola Davis kind of solidified herself in my top 5 right now. We've got a lot of movies coming out, and I'm not planting my flags on certain people yet, but there's been some incredible lead actress performances that it's going to be really hard pressed for me to kind of step away from and add somebody to. Over the next couple of weeks, I've got a lot of movies that are going to be interesting to see. I've got the Nashville Film Festival coming up. Of course, American Film Institute's coming up, which is going to be an incredible festival that I'm really looking forward to. But with all that being said, I'm excited. We're getting ready to we're getting ready to load into award season, which is a very busy time for both of us, right alongside of the holiday season. So I'm excited to see a lot of these movies and ready to put to bed if Don't Worry Darling's good or not. You know what I mean? I'm excited about that one. We'll see if that's good. I don't know. I'm nervous, but I also, also don't care what the scores from other people are. If the movie's good enough, I heard the twist is predictable, whatever. As long as the movie's, watchable, I'll be happy, because I don't want to waste the time at the movie theater. But if you don't have anything, Fox, I don't have anything. It's been great talking to you guys. We're going to be back next week. Should be same time, Thursday, around lunchtime. We've been trying to pump these out the same time so that you can join us each and every week. Make sure to get any questions in. We hope you win all your games. I hope I cash all my bets, because if I don't, then I might just – I don't know what I'm going to do, but, I'll just come back next week with seeing even more picks. Maybe I'll come up with 20 picks. But as long as the Giants lose next week, I don't really care what happens in week 3 of the NFL. So we'll see you guys next week.
Go Titans.